Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're going to be talking about headings and paper organization in APA style. Now, while it happens that we'll be using a course assignment as an example for how to select and draft your headings, our focus is not going to be on writing that assignment. It'll be about translating the instructions into the headings system that you use in APA style. Now, if you'd like information about any other Writing Center services, please feel free to check out our website or to watch any of our other videos that have a more detailed explanation of the services. We are going to be diving into looking at, first, how to understand heading formatting in APA 7th edition, looking at a specific assignment that requires that you specify a number of pieces of information with clear organization, and then we'll talk about how to translate that into practice in terms of choosing, selecting, drafting headings. So let's talk about headings in APA 7th edition. And I will note that there are some changes from APA 6th edition. So if you have come back to school after a while away and you think things look a little different, yes, they do, in fact. So the most fundamental thing is that APA style has a consistent scheme. So a heading of a particular level tells you how the information is supposed to relate to other pieces of information. So the first page of your document, minus the title page, the first page will start with the title of your paper at the top. And then thereafter, we have a system of hierarchical headings, meaning that if you go from one heading to another, the information is being marked as being contained within the larger section before it. So in this example that we see on the left, the APA Level 2 heading is delineating, oh, this is a subsection of whatever the APA Level 1 heading above it is delineating. So we're referring to this piece here, that's the APA Level 2, and the APA Level 1. Now, there is a handy-dandy chart that we have reproduced here that shows the different formatting for not only the heading and the paragraph that goes after it. And so you'll see that we start with an APA Level 1 heading, which is centered, bold, and in title case. And then after that, you have just a standard paragraph where the first line is indented half an inch. Now, if you have a subheading within that, then that's going to be an APA Level 2 heading. So same thing, except it's aligned to left. So flush left, bolded, and capitalized in title case. Now, Level 3 headings are where things start to switch a little bit, because APA Level 3 had some different appearance. Here it's going to be flush left again, bolded, and italicized. Now, if you're writing an undergrad paper, you're probably not going to get into Level 4 or Level 5 headings. This is something that doesn't come up a ton, except in something like a master's thesis or doctoral dissertation, where you might be going into some area for 10 or more pages, and so being able to show the structure is very helpful. Now, in those cases, for the Level 4 and Level 5 headings, it's very unique in that the heading is actually on the first line of the paragraph, and it is also tab indented, so indented half an inch. And those don't really come up. If you have questions about them as a graduate student, please feel free to send us an email, and we'll be happy to weigh in on that particular case. But for the first three headings, it's very simple, very easy to do, and you generally don't go beyond a Level 3 heading unless you're writing a much longer paper. Now, an important thing to keep in mind is that there's actually what I call the two-of-a-kind rule in APA style for using headings. If you're using any type of heading, there should be at least two of that type within the larger section. So within a paper, if you're using an APA Level 1 heading, there should be at least two of them. Within the section that APA Level 1 heading introduces, if you're going to use a subheading of that, well, that will be APA Level 2, the next going down this hierarchy, and there should be at least two of those. within one of those, if you were going to have another subheading, that would be APA Level 3, and we're going to need at least 2 of those there. So this is a way of asking your reader, okay, how does this relate? Oh, this is a subsection of that, and if I'm dividing it here, then clearly there must be enough that you need to be dividing it more than once. So, do you see how we have organized things here? That is the question that you're giving to the reader. And it's somewhat rhetorical because you are telling them in your heading text what it is. Alright, now these are always more clear to understand when we're looking at an assignment. So let's look at one, and this is coming from HISO 118. So this is the Rights of Women's Workers assignment, which I find particularly interesting because it's set in Lowell, Massachusetts, and I grew up in Massachusetts. So this is local history to me. So it starts out with the preamble. Okay, the purpose of this assignment is to acquire knowledge of the interconnections between industrialization, labor, gender, and workers' rights. The implications of the Industrial Revolution went far beyond technological and economic progress. Industrialization left a significant mark in modern society, engendering urbanization, environmental issues, the need for social reform, and workers' rights, and prompted women to enter the workforce. Now there's some reading to do and a 1,000-word essay. So how long is 1,000 words? Well, if you're using our APA course paper template with 1-inch margins, double spacing, and 12-point Times New Roman font, that's going to be about 4 full pages of text. Now there's body pages, meaning not counting the title page, not counting the reference pages, but 4 full pages of essay text. Now, if you were adding headings to this, it might go a little bit longer. It depends how many headings you have. But it's going to be around that. So if it spills over into a fifth, well, you're being graded on the word count. So it could be slightly under, slightly over. Make sure to run the word count. Alright, so there's some questions that are being asked here. Who are the girls who came to work at these mills? What reasons did they have for seeking outside employment? What prior skills and life experiences would have assisted their work? Oh, describe the daily life of a Lowell mill girl, with a number of sub-questions there. What is their contribution to the larger labor movement? Talking about the role of women in industry. And then we have this big one here, where it focuses on what can we learn, or what are the applications today. And if we look at the rubric here, it's saying, okay, make sure that you have all the things there. And you'll see the second row says includes examples as stipulated in certain prompts, and includes the bulleted terms. Those are those ones at the end. So you can make sure you mention those people. And you need to successfully connect the story of the Lowell Mills girls to current day activism. By the way, many of the mills are actually still standing. Many of them have been since converted to office buildings and to condos, but many of them are still there. So its physical legacy is still very much present in Lowell, Massachusetts. So let's talk about how to select headings. And for this, we're going to go ahead and grab a copy of our APA course paper template. So if you're watching this on video, you can always pause and then go download that template and then continue when you have it. Now, I've started out with our blank template copy here, and I've just pasted the assignment instructions here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to italicize them so that I can see clearly what is instruction versus what I'm putting in. And so looking at this, my first question is, how might we organize this information? So while these are numbered in the assignment instructions, there are ways that we might organize these hierarchically to make sense here. And so if we look at these, we see that the first question is, who are these girls? What were their reasons? And what did they bring? So really, who were the girls is the larger question, and then these are aspects about them. So looking at this, I'd say, okay, I might come up with a better title later, but I could just say, okay, these are the Lowell Mills girls, and make that my first heading. Now, you'll go ahead and replace this with an actual title later, but right now, for formatting this, you could format it manually, bolded and centered and everything, but that would be doing more work than you have to, because our template actually has some built-in styles, and you can see some of them up here on this quick menu, where you can click on this button here. We're in the home part of the ribbon, and you can see this button for the styles pane, which will let us see some of the styles available, and when you have something selected or clicked onto the appropriate line, you can go ahead and just select the style. And so APA Level 1, you can see that it automatically gets centered and bolded. I need to do the capitalization myself, but the rest it will do for you. And say, okay, so I'm going to be answering that question there. And so there's some things that I've looked at and said, oh, I think that's a subsection here. All right, reasons for seeking outside employment. Now, in APA style, the heading text doesn't need to be poetic. It doesn't need to be fancy. It just needs to be reasonably descriptive and concise. So, all right, this is going to be a level 2 heading, and I want to make sure I have 2 of that because I know about the rule of 2. And I look at this and say, oh, that is asking about relevant prior skills and experiences. All right, so I've found 2 headings of that type, and I'm going to format them as APA Level 2 headings. And you can see I've written them in title case, which means, among other things, any word with 4 or more letters gets the first letter capitalized. Of course, any proper nouns would as well. And so I'm going to go ahead and select APA Level 2 here, and you can see that's now flush left. And same thing here. Great, so I have probably an intro paragraph that includes an outline. And you'll know what to put in the outline when you see what all your level 1 headings are afterwards. See, okay, daily life, including working conditions, with examples, activities with examples. All right, that looks like something that doesn't quite fit in the who they were. In fact, I'm just going to make that a little more specific there. And we'll start here. And it doesn't matter if your text is very similar to the instruction. That's actually helpful because that tells the reader who is grading this with the instructions, the rubric in mind, that you have created a clear alignment. So day, daily, life, Lowell Mill Girl. Alright, so I want to make that a level 1 heading. And of course you can have different text here. I'm just giving examples of how you might translate these particular instructions in that. And if you find something that you like better, so long as it's clearly descriptive and accurate, not a problem. And so we have these sub-questions here. And so, oh, what kind of working conditions? All right, well, let's make that a level 2 heading. What kind of social and educational activities? Oh, well, those are talking about non-working conditions. Or non-working activities. And so, while there is more than one way you can phrase this, I'm using working and non-working specifically to show the contrast. Here are the things you're required, here's the things you're not. Now, we have the Lowell girls and the larger labor movement, and I'm going to write that as contributions to the larger labor movement. Now, if I have a heading like this within a paper that is about the Lowell Mill Girls, then they don't need to have Lowell Mill Girls in the heading all the time. Now, watch what happens, because this text is italicized right now. When I mark it as an AP Level 1, you'll see that the italicization is removed. And that's another reason to use the styles, because it will do a lot of that rather than you're having to do it manually. Now, as I go through, I'm leaving these instructions here so I have a cue for myself about what I'm supposed to be putting in each section. So, looking at this, alright, so this is talking about their larger change, how far this revolution goes. Well, this is kind of talking about their another level of detail for their contributions. So looking at this, I'll just take out this artifact of the copy and pasting. And we see, okay, we have a number of sub-questions. See, okay. Well, what is your contribution? And so that's more of the general intro, and then this is going in a particular direction. So, let's see. How far this revolution goes? Okay, I'm going to call that the extent of the revolution. And we'll make that a level 2. And then here, we'll call that the question of emancipation. Again, the level 2. Now, these sub-questions, these are teasing out details for that, so it makes sense for that to be within this section. And then this what we can learn, that's really asking about applications today. Now, looking at that's kind of a big picture thing. So let's go for a level 1 heading, and if we look back at the instructions, we see, alright, the rubric here specifically says that this should be a quarter of the points. So it makes a lot of sense to have a section just for that. And to look at that and say, okay, a quarter of the points, maybe that should be, as much as a page, possibly a little bit longer, but definitely somewhere in that ballpark. Because after all, a quarter of the points. So looking at this, we see, okay, there are these bulleted terms that are supposed to be included. And so one of the things you can now do, since you have this outline, is to go look and see, alright, well, having done the reading, where are the most logical points to mention to discuss those bulleted terms or individuals? So, for example, probably the strikes of 1834 and 36 are probably not going in this section, and may or may not be in this section, but I would say probably would be very relevant to discuss somewhere in this contributions to the larger labor movement. They are, after all, cited in the history of U.S. labor organization and in just about all the text, so it sounds like it's something where they've had some contributions. And of course, as you do the reading, you can, since you prepared this outline in advance, start adding in notes to yourself about what to discuss where. Alright, so let's recap what we've talked about today. So, if you are looking at APA headings, we've got 5 levels of headings, of which if you're writing a paper of, we'll say, fewer than 8 pages, you're probably not going to go beyond the level 1, 2, and 3 headings, which are all bolded and in title case, and then it's a question of its center, that's level 1, flash left, 2 and 3, and italicized, which would be number 3, AP level 3. The level 4 and 5 are basically the same thing as a level 2 and 3, except it's starting as the first line of a paragraph, and so it's indented half an inch rather than flush left. But, again, undergraduate papers, you're probably only going to be dealing with levels 1 through 3. Make sure to follow the rule of 2, and to use your instructions for your assignment as a model for how you organize the material, and use the assignment instructions to create a clear alignment between the different instructions or questions and the headings that you've used to organize your paper. And with that, I think we're at an end. So if you have any questions, please feel free to send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. You can ask questions about headings for an appointment, or if you include your draft and have a specific question, like, oh, is this formatted correctly? I'm certainly happy to answer that. That doesn't need an appointment. All right. With that, have a good night.